Oh, let me tell you something. Bustin' makes me feel good.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Blockbusting, the podcast where we love to hate the movies. I'm your host, Jay Light. Joining me today, Caitlin Durante.
Hello.
Hello.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks. Happy to have you.
Oh, I can't wait to talk about this.
Oh my God, this is quite a pick. This, Caitlin, you've come in hating real old school. This is Caitlin has come in to talk about Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Here we go.
What this might be, I think this is the oldest movie that we've had featured on the show so far.
It's an old movie. It was first released in 1937.
Mm-hmm.
So
what's your deal with it? What let's baseline.
Sure. So I grew up watching this movie a lot as a kid and loving it a lot as a kid, where I, probably saw it for the first time when I was like 4 or 5 years old. It was on VHS at my house, so it was very readily accessible. I probably watched it a couple times a year all the way up through my like teen years. And then I left home and I kind of didn't think about it again. And then I had to recently rewatch it for my podcast, and I was like, I can't wait to talk about this. This is a movie I love. And I was like, oh my God, this movie fucking sucks. So, I mean, it just is, from a storytelling and screenwriting perspective, is just really horrible. If you're looking at it from like a character study point of view, it sucks that way. Whiteness is coveted in this movie. Like, oh, the whiter you are, the better. And this movie is horrible for feminism. Like, it is like 5 octaves higher than it should be audio-wise. Like, I feel like there's almost nothing redeemable about this.
I feel you there. There's, for those of you who haven't seen this or are not familiar for whatever reason with the OG Disney canon, this is Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, a 1937 American musical animated fantasy film produced by Walt Disney Productions, based on the German fairy tale by the Brothers Grimm, the first full-length cel-animated film, the earliest Disney animated film.
Mm-hmm. Feature, yeah.
Yeah, this goes way, way, way back.
Mm-hmm.
But does it hold up? Doesn't sound like it.
Not for me, at least. And this is a super popular movie. It is like adjusted for inflation, it's one of the top 10 highest grossing movies ever, unless I'm getting my Wikipedia facts wrong.
Oh, wow.
But, it was deemed a critical success, a commercial success. The American Film Institute ranked it among the 100 greatest American films ever made.
Really?
Yep. It was also named the greatest American animated film of all time. I think also by the AFI.
AFI's top 10 top 10s. Here we go. And I'm looking at this list now, and it's dominated by Disney movies. The only one that's in there that's not one of a Disney or Pixar feature is Shrek.
Interesting.
Shrek is number 8.
Another movie I would not list among the top 10 anything. But
Shrek, it's one of those movies.
A story for another day.
I remember rewatching Shrek as an older person,
mm-hmm.
and just like all these jokes that went over my head, coming back and being like, oh yeah, I get that now, but this list needs to be updated.
Yes.
Far and away. Like Toy Story is number 6.
If Moana isn't on there, then it's not a list worth reading.
We've got, it's all, the newest one on here is Finding Nemo, which we've also talked about on this podcast before.
Oh, really? Someone hates Finding Nemo?
Kelly McInerney hates Finding Nemo.
Oh, Kelly.
But yeah, so Snow White is basically, it's a fairy tale story.
Yes.
And it has a lot of right from the jump, it's basically hits all these bullet points that are like pretty standard fairy tale Disney, especially plotline sort of notes. It's got the damsel in distress princess. There's an evil queen or stepmother or witch of some kind. And this one, it's just it is a stepmother and a queen.
And a witch.
And
She's
a witch.
all of them.
She's all of the above. And she's talking, right from the jump, she's got a magic mirror and who's the fairest of them all. And you have just a pale maiden who like runs and she's like gets to run out into the forest, and there's all this. It doesn't strike me as a movie that I would want to rewatch now.
Right. It does not. I mean, storytelling wise, in terms of its like story structure, it's well, first of all, you can like kind of boil down the premise of this movie as being a woman who is so upset by the fact that there's another woman who's hotter than her, that she's like, I have to kill her. Like, so it's a feminist masterpiece. But
totally. Girl power to the extreme.
And so it's like a very men's understanding of, I think, how women interact. Like, it's like, oh, women hate each other because they're always competing for who's the hottest. And if women are concerned with how hot they are, it's only because men have put these, unrealistic expectations of beauty on us. So, but, I won't get into that. But the screenwriting of this movie, and, I have a master's degree in screenwriting, so I am an expert. I don't like to bring it up, but I am a master.
It is very appropriate here.
The story is the protagonist of this story is a woman who is not, first of all, she has no very specific goal that she has to, achieve. Mm-hmm. And she is not making any active choices in the story, hardly ever. Right. So, yeah, I mean, from a storytelling point of view, that's the exact opposite of what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, it's a lot of her just kind of stumbling into situations and then being rescued over and over and over again, which is not compelling for a character.
No, not at all. And we also don't know anything about her, anything about what she likes. The only things, as far as we can tell, that she's able to do is to cook and clean. Mm-hmm. So also, she's a feminist icon. She sucks. Her voice is shrill, and not to detract from the cause, but the whole movie, she's just like, and then she's singing. She's like, where's my Prince Charming? And it's... She's waiting around for a prince. She's not even trying to find her prince. She's waiting for him to find her. She is like the most passive protagonist I think I've ever seen in a movie.
Yeah, I mean, one of the iconic songs from this movie is literally called "Someday My Prince Will Come."
Yeah, exactly.
She's not seeking him out. She's just waiting, biding her time.
And I guess, you can make the argument that it's like, she's being entrapped by her queen witch mom, and she can't go anywhere and she can't do anything. But I would argue that fairy tales are stupid, and yes, we have to suspend our disbelief for a lot of what happens in fairy tales, but they are based on these like very patriarchal ideas that it's like, yeah, just you're going to be a damsel in distress if you're a woman, and you just got to like wait around to be saved. So, which is why I love movies like Moana so much, because it takes the exact opposite approach. But yeah, it's just, there's a 4-minute scene where people are yodeling the whole time. Snow White is hardly even in this movie. It's every set piece, every time there's like an extended scene where something's happening, it's usually either the dwarves, like mining their fucking jewels. And I would like to introduce into the canon of both Snow White and Titanic that one of the jewels that they mine is the heart of the ocean from Titanic.
Ooh.
That's canon now.
I'm cool with that.
Great.
Let's have that movie. Let's have that crossover.
Right? Where's the crossover? So, it's the dwarves, they're mining their jewels. They are washing their hands for the first time ever, ? They are, playing their instruments. They're, they're fighting over a pillow. Every it feels like almost a series of sketches in this movie. There's not that cohesive of a story because you have a protagonist who has no specific goal and is therefore not trying to accomplish anything. So it's just like she's sitting around, she sings about her Prince Charming every now and then, but it's mostly either dwarves or the woodland critters, who I would argue are the most active characters in the story. You know, they're like, oh yeah, we'll help you wash some dishes and here we'll show you where to live. Snow White breaks into their house. She's like, no one's home. I better just this is my house now.
And she also just assumes that the house is just run by a ragtag group of children.
She's so stupid.
She is. It's interesting that this is the first of the Disney princess movies, because I don't know if this was a conscious decision on the part of Disney's animators and screenwriting team.
Yeah.
From this, after this, maybe they were like, oh, well, maybe we should make princesses that actually kind of have some agenda to them a little bit.
Right.
Some agency.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, the next princess movie right after this is, and forget, I just got to pull this up real quick.
I think it might be Sleeping Beauty?
Cinderella.
Okay.
Sleeping Beauty. Yeah, Cinderella's 1950. Then you got Alice in Wonderland, and then Sleeping Beauty. Does Alice in Wonderland, does she count as a Disney princess? I don't know if she does.
I would say not especially, but I think people do kind of lump her in to that because she's a woman in a dress. So she's a princess.
Hits the criteria.
Yeah.
But so even in Cinderella, she goes out and is, kept locked away by this evil stepmother
enslaved
queen.
By her.
Enslaved.
Evil, yeah.
And her goal is she still has sort of the same goals, which is I want to marry a prince.
Yeah.
But she at least sneaks out of the house and goes to this party and has a wild time and leaves her shoe behind, her slipper, and that's at least doing stuff actively to move the story along.
A little more. I would argue, though, that she needs so much help with her, fairy godmothers and stuff that she...
Right, and the mice...
is rendered still pretty kind of passive. Definitely more active than Snow White. But yeah, there's a long history of Disney movies just being like, oh, well, women can't do anything. So let's just watch them flail around the woods for a while.
And this is not one of those movies where I feel like you're kind of not even rooting for Snow White because she is so passive.
Right. But also when I was a kid, I guess I was. Although I think I just really liked the dwarves and the critters.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing. If you look now at how Snow White is marketed, as far as not even the movie is marketed now in a way. If you go to the Disney store or any Disney theme park, there's not really any Snow White merch.
Right.
It's all stuff with grumpy looking sassy on a t-shirt or dopey looking dopey on a t-shirt, I guess. You don't have Snow White showing up in anything.
Right.
That's how flimsy of a character she is.
Yeah, she's got no characterization whatsoever. I feel like you'll see her wandering around the park as one of the people dressed up as her, but other than that, yeah. There's nothing to mine from with her character. I think a more interesting movie than the one that we see is The House Full of Little People who have banded together and made a life for themselves during a time when marginalized people were even worse off than they are today. So let's see their story. Who gives us a shit about this annoying white lady who is so white that she's the hottest in the land? I want to see a movie that's an exploration of the intricacies of this 7 little people and this little micro community that they've built. Here are the questions I have. How did they find each other? Why do they all look the exact same pretty much, except for Dopey, who can't talk because he's never tried? Okay.
And is the only one who's wearing clothes that are too big for him. It seems like a choice that they kind of forced him into.
Right.
I don't know how all these guys got their nicknames.
Well, that's who named them.
Who named them?
And yeah, it's the one main characteristic of them is just becomes their name, I guess, which is stupid. And also I think that grumpy gives grumpy people a bad name because as a grumpy person, he hates women and he sucks. Anyway, okay, more questions I have.
Hit me with your questions.
What challenges do the dwarfs face in a world where their monarch only cares that she's the hottest person in the kingdom? And what has that done to the socio-political climate? And that's pretty much all the questions I thought of.
Here's a question that I have, and this is one I posed to you as someone who has seen the movie more recently than I have.
Mm-hmm.
Is it ever explained to Snow White why she's on the chopping block?
Well, okay, so there's the huntsman who is commissioned to kill her.
Right, and take her heart and keep it in a box. Also covered in jewels.
Right. It's like, did they get those from the dwarves? Also, Dopey, I'll answer your question in a second, but there's a scene where after we see them mining their jewels for the first time, they have this vault where they keep their booty, and Dopey locks it with a key and then just hangs the key right next to the door. It's like, that's not how security works.
Hey, look, this is a very trusting time. They left their house unlocked.
True. Yeah, because Snow White just barges right in.
All they know is a simple mining life.
Yeah.
Where they dig, and they mine the whole way through.
Yeah.
They don't care about making sure that they have decoys or multiple locks or keeping things away.
No, they lock the door, I guess, to be like, hey, hope no one takes our jewels, but then they just hang the key right next to the door in plain sight. So, yeah, I guess they're just, so is it, I don't know. Nothing in this movie makes sense. The huntsman, to answer your question, he is about to kill her. He's got his knife raised above his head, ready to just impale her with it. But I don't think he explained. He says, the queen wants you dead. Go run into the woods. He can't kill her because she's too hot, by the way. Snow White almost gets murdered at least three times in this movie. And each time, most of the times that she stays alive it's because she's just simply so
too
hot.
So hot.
So he's like, the queen wants you dead, so run away, never come back. Very like Simba vibes from, Lion King, but
we all know how hot Simba was.
Yeah, Simba is so hot. Snow White it's never explained fully to her that the queen wants her dead because she's considered the fairest now in the land. So but she does nothing to investigate anything. And it was pointed out by a friend of mine that whenever she takes a bite of the poison apple at the end, the witch tells her that it's a wishing apple. She wishes for her prince to come and sweep her off her feet. She takes a bite of the apple, immediately falls under like the sleeping death curse, and then is woken up again when the prince comes to kiss her unconscious body that she cannot consent to the kiss, and that's a whole other thing we can unpack. So as far as she knows, she takes a bite of the wishing apple, wishes for her prince to come, wakes up, and the prince is immediately there. So, that's so fucked up.
There's a lot, and especially once you get into that section of the story, there's a lot of stuff that does not track with any of the ways that the characters should behave. Like, the queen is so obsessed with being hot.
Yeah.
And yet she turns a potion in to make her
an ugly old hag.
Yeah. I don't think that she would do that. I don't believe that she would actively make herself ugly just to try and pull a fast one on Snow White.
Unless it was reversible is the only thing I can imagine. Because it seems like it could be just like a temporary spell to make her temporarily ugly. But, that doesn't make sense at all.
And also the curse that she puts on her is not death. It's just a sleeping curse.
Mm-hmm.
Why doesn't the queen after she puts Snow White to sleep, why doesn't she kill her herself?
Right.
Even the villain in this movie can't bring herself to do the thing that she's trying to achieve.
Right.
She's putting a Band-Aid on the situation.
Yeah. And I guess it's just because Snow White's so hot.
So hot. If there's one thing that this movie teaches people, it's that being hot will save you.
Your life. Right. And it also teaches like young boys that, hey, it's okay to kiss an unconscious woman. And it teaches young girls that, yeah, you don't have to do anything. You can just sit idly by and all your problems will be solved for you. Anyway,
So let me ask you this. So you say you watched this movie a lot growing up as a kid. What were the things that and you know, obviously when you're watching stuff as a kid, a lot of stuff goes over your head. You know, I missed that they called the Shrek's villain Lord Fuckwad, essentially. And, right?
Yep, okay.
Farquaad, see?
Yeah.
I don't pick up on these things. There's a lot of stuff in this movie that I don't think that we picked up on when we were kids watching.
Definitely not on a conscious level.
Right.
No.
What do you think, like, what's the best way to put this? What do you think is the stuff that you saw and liked into this movie growing up watching it that you were unable to reckon with now watching it?
Well, I haven't seen, before I rewatched it within the past year or so, I hadn't watched it probably like 15 years prior to that. So I don't know if I necessarily remember or am super conscious of what I did like about it that I now find really problematic. Because I feel like I didn't even like Snow White. I didn't care about her journey. I didn't care about the romance. I think I just I was entertained by the music and the dwarves and the silly antics that they get into.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's just that I recognized as a younger person how boring and also annoying Snow White is. And I was like, I can't wait till we get back to the dwarf scenes. But I did like the story enough because the dwarfs aren't introduced until probably a half hour into the movie. And,
right.
So I'm not really sure. What I do know is how shitty this movie is now. And we already talked about how Snow White is super passive and how the prince kisses her unconscious body, which is supposed to be a romantic and good thing because it lifts the curse.
Right.
And it's like, how about you don't kiss a woman who cannot consent because she's asleep / almost dead. Also, the dwarves, as far as they know, she is dead.
Yeah, they put her in a coffin in the woods. In glass.
Right.
Just
so
leave her
looking upon her.
Yeah, they
hotness.
just leave her in sunlight, like baking in an oven.
Right.
She does not decompose at all.
Mm-mm.
She would be, first of all, crazy sunburn.
Oh, yeah.
And then thus, of course, eliminating her hotness because then she's no longer white. She's going to be beet red.
Yeah.
But you can't have a movie called Blood Red and the Seven Dwarfs because nobody would watch that.
No one wants that. But yeah, I mean, it's just, I guess just Walt Disney was like, yeah, this is how our adaptations of fairy tales are going to go. It's just women who are, unconscious or can't talk. Like if, we go to Little Mermaid, the prince falls in love with her when she is not able to speak, which sends some pretty alarming messages.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is, I'm looking at some of the production history now, too. This was Walt Disney's baby. This was, he really, really fought tooth and nail to get this movie made.
Huh.
To the point where when he pitched it, he acted out the entire movie by himself.
What a narc.
And he also, his brother, Roy Disney, who you might remember from from probably when they re-released it, is the intro of this movie, because he explains this movie almost didn't get made, but Roy Disney and his wife both tried to talk him out of making this movie.
Yeah.
And the press at the time referred to this movie as Disney's folly. They did not think this was a good idea even back then.
Interesting.
And that was partially because it was expensive, because it's a full-length animated feature in cell animation, which is also a very difficult process.
Mm-hmm.
But also, it's just like the X factor here, and this is my favorite point that you brought up, and something that I haven't even really considered until we talked about it now. It's not Snow White's movie.
Yeah.
It's just not.
Yeah, she is, I would say, still arguably the protagonist. She's, the title character. It's mostly told from her point of view. We open with her, we end with her, but she's in the movie so little and she does nothing. She does nothing to drive the narrative. Mm-hmm. She makes hardly any active choices that progress the story forward. And it's mostly the dwarves just like taking a bath.
Yeah. They have all these Disney movies now that are coming out, and they're doing like the gritty reboot of all the old animated movies.
Oh, sure.
I can't imagine Disney making a gritty modern reboot of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs and it being about Snow White. It would be that kind of story that you described, where we're going to follow the dwarves.
Yeah.
We're going to see their life, and they're going to defend themselves from interlopers and from jewel thieves. Mm-hmm. And that is the movie.
They're going to learn to take their keys with them.
Yeah. And Peter Dinklage is going to get, CGI'd 7 different times.
It's going to be like in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, where the man who plays the Oompa Loompa is just
just him over and over and over again.
Oh gosh.
And this is the thing. They also look at this. The dwarves. This is funny. The dwarves' names were chosen from a pool of about 50 potential, so they couldn't figure out which dwarves they wanted to put in here.
Oh,
here are the dwarves that are left on the cutting room floor.
Oh yes.
Jumpy. Deafy.
Deafy? As in he could not hear.
He's deaf.
Oh no! I'm glad they didn't include that one. That's horrible.
Dizzy.
Okay.
Hickey.
What does that even mean? He's covered in hickeys?
Covered in hickeys, or leaves a bunch of hickeys.
Ooh.
That's the original draft of The Prince. It's just leaving hickeys on an unconscious white lady's body.
Yeah.
Wheezy. Baldy.
Okay. They're all bald.
They are all bald. That didn't change anything.
No.
Gabby. Nifty. Sniffy. Swift. Lazy. Puffy.
Oh.
That's one of my favorite ones. We get P. Diddy in the mix.
Gabriel Iglesias could be them.
Oh,
he's fluffy. Sorry. He's
close
not puffy.
Enough. He's fluffy in real life, but in the Disney version, he is puffy. Stuffy. So just a very sniffly little boy the whole time. A little boy, old man.
Yeah.
Tubby, shorty, which seems redundant.
Right.
And burpee.
Oh, cool.
So just add to the grossness level of these 7 men who don't know who've never washed their hands before and live in filth.
Yeah. I guess the ones that they did stick with are probably they did pick the best 7. And a lot of those characters we know so much better than we know Snow White. For example, like Doc he's always like kind of stumbling over his words, and he's kind of the alpha. He's the leader of the group, but he's also kind of a bumbling idiot. We've got Grumpy, who is a woman-hating bastard who talks about how much he thinks women are evil the whole time. We know everything. We know so much more about these characters, the 7 dwarves, than we do about Snow White. The only thing we know about Snow White is that she makes gooseberry pies. She is waiting for her prince to come and sweep her off her feet, and that she likes to sing. I get there's nothing about her character that draws us in as an audience for us to be like, yeah, I admire her, or I relate to her, or like, she sucks so bad.
Do you think that this is a problem with turning fairy tales into movies just sort of as a whole, or do you think that this is something that is easily avoided?
I think that Disney's rendition of adapting fairy tales has, as we've kind of hinted at, been a bad idea, just because I think of how early Disney movies viewed women. But then you have things like Moana, which is, I wouldn't call it a fairy tale. It's certainly not of like, the Brothers Grimm camp or anything like that, but it is rooted in mythology and lore from a different part of the world. And they were able to adapt that story into a narrative that has a woman who is active and who does do things and who drives the narrative. So I think it all depends on the take you approach it with, like your how much you think that women can do things, and then showing that in your movie. Because there have been Snow White adaptations of, I don't know if you remember, like the Mirror Julia Roberts vehicle from like the mid 2000s, around the same time Snow White and the Huntsman, maybe, or maybe that's the sequel. But there was Kristen Stewart,
right?
I have to believe the Snow White character is way more active in those. I haven't seen those adaptations. And I also don't know if you remember seeing a preview for, I think it was called Snow White and the Red Shoes, that had Chloe Grace Moretz playing. It was another like CGI animated adaptation. But the problem with that, and I think they took it off, like they shelved it because there was such horrible backlash to the trailer that was released, where it was Snow White wears these red shoes. So I guess they're like also crossing over with
Wizard of Oz. What is the deal? This movie encompasses, this is like the St. Elsewhere snow globe of movies. There's so much history here.
Right. So with this trailer, it was, she wears red shoes, which apparently make her beautiful, and by that I mean they make her thin, and then as soon as she takes off the shoes, she's fat. And how disgusting how disgusted people are by the fact that she's fat, which is horribly fat shamey, and everyone's like, what the fuck is this movie? And then the response was so bad that I think they've just forgotten, like they're not going to release it. And
I mean, look, at the end of the day, if you're not hot in a fairy tale, then you deserve to be dead.
You should die.
And that's just a great lesson to carry on forward.
I'm so glad that as a kid I learned that lesson, and that's why I'm hot now. So,
okay, let me ask you this. So usually I do ask a movie that you would recommend instead, and you brought up Moana a bunch. So I'm going to ask a different question.
Okay, sure.
As a master of screenwriting,
thank you so much.
What would you have written this movie about to keep it from Snow White's perspective and still have the title character be the hero of the movie and not just a passive protagonist who you don't root for?
Sure.
What would you do? What's your version of Snow White look like? Oh,
okay. So I think you can still have a lot of the backstory and or Act 1 be fairly similar, where you do except rather than an evil queen, I would make it a man, because I think it's much more realistic to have, and maybe this like kind of evil guy is an embodiment of the patriarchy, but there's something that he has against Snow White, and he is setting out, because maybe, I don't know, maybe she's in line for the throne next, even though that's not realistic with, monarchies and the patriarchy and stuff. But let's say she, for some reason, was in line to be the next, helm at the throne, and maybe her like awful, shitty, brother is like, no, I want to be the king or the ruler. So he tries to have her killed, and she escapes herself rather than like being like told to run away and where to go and where to sleep and like seek a safe haven. So everything that happens is that, she figures out where to seek refuge. She figures out who tried to kill her and why. And then she, in like Act 3 would be her kind of coming back to the castle and being like, hey, I've got this, army of deer and rabbits and shit, woodland critters. I'm going to come and kill you, brother, who tried to have me killed. And then, so she defeats the bad guy. And then that's my, I don't know if you edit, but I can take that again, because that was my thing going off for my meter. Anyway, it's her storming the castle, killing the bad guy, and, resuming her place her rightful place as the ruler of the monarch. The end.
I like that.
Thank you.
And that's way more compelling. I'd watch that, and then we can definitely, if we're doing cell animation, just take stills of Brett Kavanaugh screaming at his Supreme Court hearing this week,
right?
And use that as the evil brother who's super pissed off, and get him very yelly and screaming.
Yeah, let's fast track this movie, Hollywood.
Disney, come on! Look, you canceled. This is one last thing. There was originally a prequel that they were developing. I don't know if you saw this. I'm just looking at this now on the Wikipedia page for Snow White. In the 2000s, Disney Toon Studios began development on a computer animated prequel titled The Seven Dwarfs. They pitched a story explaining how the dwarfs met, how the evil queen killed Snow White's father and took the throne. As it went through development, the management changed the story of the prequel to center around how Dopey lost his voice upon witnessing the death of his mother.
Oh, what?
Yeah.
That's stupid.
It's so needlessly dark.
Yeah.
And weird.
And I would argue not that interesting.
No.
I think that the story that they were originally pitching is more interesting probably than the original Snow White movie as well. So, because I want to learn who are these little people who, have banded together and have formed this community.
I'd watch that. I'd want to find out. Bring it back, Laster. Come on, man. All right. Well, Caitlin.
Yes.
Thank you so much for bringing this to my attention.
Thank you for having me. I've had a splendid time.
If you guys are interested, Caitlin mentioned earlier she's the host of a wonderful podcast called The Bechtel Cast.
Thank you. Yes.
And you want to talk about that a little bit? Just
sure. Absolutely. Yeah. We just talk about the portrayal of women in popular movies and how historically it has not been good. We did do an episode on Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. So if you want a good place to start, that's a good episode to start with. I think it's one of my favorites that we've ever done. Search for the Bechtel Cast. You can follow us on Twitter at BechtelCast, and that is spelled BECHDEL.
And where can the listeners find you on the internet? You
can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Caitlin Durante, and that's Caitlin spelled CAITLIN. And check out my website, CaitlinDurante.com. And listen to the Bechtel Cast.
Awesome. You can find me at Diet J on Twitter and Instagram, jlightcomedy.com for upcoming show dates. And go ahead and leave a review and subscribe on iTunes and all that good stuff. Let's rise to the charts. Look, we got a new season of The Bachelor and Bachelorette podcast recaps overtaking me on the charts already. I just want to get above those.
Yeah,
let's make it happen, folks. This has been Blockbusting. Go see something good for a change.